Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. So actually Dungeons and Dragons 5e, but actually I have a guest with me who's going to talk specifically about how to run Dungeons and Dragons or play Dungeons and Dragons with kids. That's Dungeons and Dragons 5e. Hi, Sadie.
Hello, I'm Sadie Rogers. I'm in Chicago, and I do run Dungeons and Dragons online for kids ages 9 to 14 primarily, but have also been recently delving into running it for much younger kids, ages 5 to 8. And I have lots of exciting things to share with you that may kind of demystify that.
So I love wizards and I love monks, but I know that magic and spells in Dungeons and Dragons 5e is complex. So how do you actually run magic and spells in Dungeons and Dragons 5e for kids when it's probably one of the hardest and most complicated and specific aspects of the game? I mean, how do you do that?
When I first started running D&D for kids, because I use a lot of theater of the mind and simple, really simple stripped down grids, I wasn't sure how I was going to do that. I think my biggest fear was that I would be doing math and they would be waiting all the time, basically. But what I found works the best for younger kids with magic is using the power and the comedy of description with their spells more so than worrying about the numbers. You give them a simplified list of spells, and I'm speaking specifically to the littles, and then you have it do crazy things and have crazy consequences and effects when it hits, right? Have the fire spread, or have it, if they roll low, have it kind of shoot out of their hand and just like peter out or whatever, like the little bubble of fire onto the ground. All the weird creative things that magic can do. I will say that with older kids, part of the joy is discussing the complexity. I've been known to talk to 13 and 14-year-olds for very long amounts of time about, what is this spell's effect within this spell if somebody's casting sleet storm and then somebody's within and they have, so those kinds of things are actually fun for the preteens. But yeah, simplifying magic and making it more descriptive, finding the humor in it, finding the consequences to the people around you. And then I think this is something that I definitely recommend to all DMs for little kids. When a kid gets a spell, if it's new, say they find a spell scroll, whatever, however you decide to introduce it to the game, have them go test it out. Give them a moment to see what it looks like. So, there's a field nearby if you want to try out Fireball, or there's Create or Destroy Water, or something like that, or you want to test out Burning Hands on some straw in the corner. Let them test out the spell and then describe how crazy it looks and how big it is, so that kid knows when they use it on the enemy. But yeah, don't stress out about the magic stuff. Just make it part of the world building, especially for the littles, and then do stress out about it for the older kids.
So I had a parent who explained to me how he ran magic in his game for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. And he said, look, my young ones, they're just too young. They can't read the book. There's no way they can deal with all the spell descriptions that there are there. And he says, I don't use a spell attack. I don't use spell saving throws. All they do is they have a number, arcana, and they add that to whatever they roll on their D20. And they tell me what that is, and then I decide how successful whatever they describe to me they want to do with their magic. So it's completely free form. In other words, they tell him what they are trying to do with their magic. They roll the dice to see how well they do it, or if they are successful, and he tells them if it's successful or it does something else or doesn't work. And I thought that was quite interesting. When I heard that, I was like, oh, I feel like you're heading in the direction of the future. But I was wondering, do you have that sort of thing going on at your table, or do you, particularly for the younger generation, or is it something else?
I have been known to completely leave dice out of it. I played at a game, a TTRPG with some adults a few months ago, where it was just describe, and then the DM sort of describes what the effect of that is. And it was one of the best games of my life as far as tabletop role playing games go. It was so fun, and it got so crazy and so creative so fast. I have tried that with kids. In the 9 to 14 range, it sort of works, but I actually think the dice help a little bit with that. But with the younger kids, yes, That is absolutely fantastic. Having, if you want to keep the dice in there and have it be the D20, and that's fine, but having them describe what they do, what magic they create, right? Sure, leave it completely open and then see what that does. The only issue I would say with that is there are some kids that want to go rogue and do a little Grand Theft Auto, right? So that's going to happen. You're going to get occasionally murder hobos. You're going to get 6-year-old ones where they're like, okay, so I can kill or I can start a fire. So I want to kill everyone in this room. So then you're like, as a DM, you're like, okay, consequences have to kick in now. And then I didn't really want to be teaching like world lessons today. So it can get a little tricky. So I think I think it goes back to gauging, reading the room and knowing what kind of table you have. If you have kids that are going to try to break the construct of the world down because they think that's funny, keep the dice. If you don't, if you have kids that really want to just be invested and really meet all the NPCs and stuff like that, maybe lean a little bit more on just role play from the beginning and seeing where they go and stuff like that.
One of the things I found when I ran games for the younger generation, and it doesn't work with everybody, but there are some where the kind of things they want to do are pretty macabre. And if you sort of bump the censor rating up a little bit and you're a little bit gory with what you describe in the game, they love it. And then there's those kids who just can't deal with it. But I have found that some kids really like that macabre aspect, and oh, the arrow went into the eye and there's blood spurting out. I'm like, yes. And then and then I've had other dungeon masters, and I haven't encountered that much myself, but I know I've come across dungeon masters who say, look, when I get them to cast magic, there's no spell that makes blue butterflies that swarm around an orc to distract them so that they can run away. So I'll just let them describe that, and they don't want to kill the orc. They just don't want to have to fight it and kill it. And they don't want to wind up their character getting hurt as well. So that's how they deal with that situation. I find it really interesting that you talk about not using dice at all, because I have on many occasions, and we've talked about this before, feel like, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I feel like Dungeons and Dragons will go diceless at one point, and it will be just down to the players describing what their character's doing, coming up with a really good plan, and it'll be about selling the idea to the dungeon master, who determines whether they think it's reasonable, that it's successful or not, rather than being completely at the discretion of a random 1 to 20 roll. So I thought that was really interesting.
I think that the best thing about D&D, and I obviously have played for years, but working with kids on it for the last full year, is that it's not just about a scenario where a creature comes and you have to choose whether to run from it or to kill it, but sometimes, like you said, you have to construct a plan. So how do you teach a group of kids that they're going to need to really think this out in character and present this plan to the DM? And I just, watching kids do that, watching them learn to do that, it's collaborative thinking. It's great, and they're so good at it once they get the hang of it. And it's helped me as a person, actually. So yes, I absolutely agree with you. I think there is space in D&D, and I what I do with little kids and sometimes with the preteens is I say, all right, guys, today you have to somehow get to the blah blah blah. Inside this room, there's a young Rimaraz in the room. You know that there's no other doors out. You have to somehow distract this creature, get it to come out the door so that you can get into that room to get that thing, but you're not high enough level to kill it. We all know that. You've rolled inside enough times. So metagame, let's have a 3-minute chat about what you're going to do, and then present it to your DM, and then we'll start the game. And it's, first of all, it's the cutest thing ever when kids are having a little meeting, but it's also teaching them to think about what each other has and what each other can do in the space, and distraction and things like that, and creative ways to get, how do you get a creature to go past you and lure it out in whatever way. And I've had some really cool things happen, where kids have come up with some really crazy cool plans. And here's the thing, if you're DMing for kids and they aren't getting there, they just aren't, that maybe they're literally confused, or they just don't know what you want them to say, and they're getting you can see when a kid's getting flustered or frustrated, right? You got to have an NPC there or a townsperson that walks by who just suggests something. Just have that plant and have it ready and be like, it's a ogre, they like shiny things. What if you had a shiny thing that was kind of dangling along that kind of led them out this way? Or what if you had a group of animals that you could unleash so the Remoraz chases them and then you guys are invisible or something like that? Or have like a little a little sidekick perhaps that you throw in from the beginning. I have a goblin that I use with a lot of kids named Droop. He's from Mines of Fendelfer, and I have elaborated and turned Droop into this. He talks like this, and he's really invested, and he won't leave, and he just sticks around, and he has a lot of ideas when nobody else does. And basically that way you're not killing off kids, and you're not asking too much of them, and you're never causing them to be stressed out. Just keeping it real fun and low key.
I almost felt like you were doing a impersonation of Elmo from Sesame Street. Just for a second there, almost felt like it was Elmo from Sesame Street. Now, I haven't prepared you for this, Sadie, so you can let me know if it's too hard to answer. But I would really like to know some examples of things that kids have tried to do with their magic, whether it be sort of the free form side of things or the combination of spells. I mean, it would be lovely to hear a couple of stories or one story if that's what you've got.
I have been known to allow Charm Person to work on just about anything. I have had Creator Destroy Water. This actually, I thought was brilliant. These dwarves had taken Potion of Gaseous Form and they were floating up. And I let a girl cast Creator Destroy Water and had the water splash through, rain through. And what I had happen, because I just thought it was so fun, is that as the water hit the gaseous form, it dissipated out, right? Like it got pushed out, and it immediately turned back into the dwarf chunks. So there were just chunks of dwarf body all over the place. That one actually came back to bite me because they fought an Oni like 6 months later. These kids have been playing for a while, and now they're really in and they're higher level, and they were fighting an Oni, which is like epic. And the Oni did gaseous form, and she goes, wait a minute. And it's like, oh no, she's going to defeat a high level Oni with Creator Destroy Water. But I also was kind of proud that she remembered.
Well, let's come at this at a different angle when it comes to magic. One of the things that I always thought was fabulous, but its application in Dungeons and Dragons 5e isn't very good. But one of the things I thought was fabulous was wild magic from the sorcerer, and that wild magic chart. I'd try this with my home group, and I feel like it would definitely be something that kids would grasp onto, and that is every time they cast a spell. I mean, we changed the rules, okay? We changed the rules. So every time I cast a spell with the sorcerer and it's a level 1 or up spell, it doesn't have to be a cantrip, just level 1 up. Every time, didn't roll a 20, there's going to be something on the chart. It used to be hilarious. We used to have a great time turning into sheep or pot plants and various other things, or fireballing the entire party. Not quite so popular, but I was wondering if the use of the wild magic table or surges with kids is like a good idea when things go wrong, or even when things don't go wrong if they're playing, say, a sorcerer.
Yes, absolutely. I have two things to say about that. I think that giving consequences to magic is definitely fun, and I have a wild magic chart that I made that is catered to younger kids, taking fun and goofy things from the one in the PHB, and then from some exciting ones online, and then just funny weird things that I kind of came up with. And I started doing that with one group. It is a blast and a half to know that every time you cast a spell, something else will happen, cause and effect every single time. Now, you can manipulate that however it works for your table. Another thing a DM did with me last week, this was with a group of adults, but I found it to be, I just love stuff like this. He basically had these beautiful beverages offered, and everybody, wild magic occurred when everybody took a sip. And, you know, kids, they love stuff like that. And the potted plant itself, I mean, you got to have somebody turn into a potted plant. You got to have a unicorn appear for no reason for a while, and then have somebody ride it, because they will. They get on top, and then it disappears, and they fall. Like that kind of weird 1 minute magic. It's so great, and that gets their minds flowing too. So I definitely think either make your own wild magic chart, Google others. There's a bunch that you can find online, and yeah, make it fit the kid too in some weird ways. Definitely.
When it comes to magic, probably the hardest thing to deal with is concentration spells. So I'm assuming you still use concentration for the kids that are sort of 9 upward, but what about the younger generation, who are sort of 5 to 8? Are you going to be using something like concentration spells in your game?
I do not worry about that with the younger kids. I take the concept of concentrating on a spell. It would still come into play only, Fred, in that I might say, okay, so you're really focused as you whatever, and as I'm describing what they look like as they're casting this spell. And that's another thing that we haven't spoken to yet is I do ask kids to speak to what it looks like when they cast. What are your gestures? What are your words? They come up with the funniest stuff, and then once they've tried it once, that's what they do every time they use that spell. It's great. It's super creative.
This has been a great conversation, Sadie. So thank you very much. So where can people find you, Sadie?
I am available on Instagram at Sad Pigs. That's SADPIGS. And I am also working on a film about some adults playing D&D that is in early development, called Heart of the Trepid, and it's on Instagram at Heart of the Trepid. That's TREPID. My YouTube is Sadie and Valinor, and I'm kind of all over the internet. So come find me, ask me any questions, hit me up anytime. I'm around. Thank you.
I'm going to put all of those links, or as many as I can, down in the description so you can find those. Thank you, Sadie, for being on. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.